Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Let's do it.
Today, we're diving into something that I think is really relevant, especially if you happen to be, let's say, a finance student at the University of Lagos.
Oh, exams coming up.
Exactly. Next month, right? So what better time to tackle a theory that often pops up, the Keynesian view of the demand for money.
Or as it's sometimes called, liquidity preference theory, a classic.
Definitely a classic. But, it tries to explain something that on the surface might seem a little bit irrational.
Oh, yeah.
Why we hold on to cash, even though it doesn't earn any interest.
I mean, logically, shouldn't we be investing everything for maximum returns?
Right. But Keynes had some pretty interesting ideas about why we don't always do that.
He did.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
What are the core reasons people hold money, according to this theory?
Well, Keynes basically said there are three main motives: the transaction motive, precautionary motive, and the speculative motive. So the first two are pretty practical. The transaction motive just means we need cash for everyday things, right? Buying groceries, paying bills,
Makes sense.
And then the precautionary motive, that's about holding money for unexpected expenses.
Emergencies, rainy day fund, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You never know when your car might break down or you might need a sudden medical expense. It makes sense to have some cash tucked away for those just-in-case moments.
Yeah, totally. But it's that third one, the speculative motive, that I always find the most intriguing.
It is interesting. It gets into investor psychology a bit.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Have you ever held on to a chunk of savings in cash, even though you knew it wouldn't grow as much as investing it?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there at some point.
It's like we're kind of betting that holding cash will be more advantageous later on. Like maybe we think the market is going to crash or something.
Yeah. That's a great example of the speculative motive in action. Like during the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of people held on to cash because they anticipated the stock market falling further.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily irrational, right? There can be logic behind it.
Not at all. Keynes argued that interest rates play a huge role in this whole decision-making process. If people believe interest rates are going to rise, they might hoard cash, anticipating they'll get a better return on their money later down the line.
That's interesting. So it's all about trying to time the market in a way.
In a sense, yes. Trying to predict where things are headed and position yourself accordingly.
But does this theory, does it always hold true in the real world?
Well, like all economic theories, it has its assumptions and its critics.
Right.
I mean, one assumption is that everyone reacts to interest rate changes the same way.
Right.
But in reality, people's financial decisions are driven by so many factors. Their risk tolerance, their future expectations, even cultural influences,
Absolutely.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
No, for sure. Everyone's different. So it's more like a complex dance than a simple equation. What are some other criticisms of the theory?
Well, another common one is that Keynesian theory really emphasizes those short-term interest rates. But it doesn't always fully account for those longer-term investments. Like, think about buying a property or starting a business.
Right.
Those are influenced by interest rates as well, but often in a different way than short-term decisions.
That makes sense.
And then you have economists, folks like Milton Friedman, who argued that the demand for money is more stable and predictable than Keynes suggested.
Oh, interesting.
He thought factors like income and wealth played a bigger role than those short-term fluctuations in interest rates.
So it's like we've got these different schools of thought here, these different perspectives on how things actually work.
Exactly. It's always important to consider different viewpoints.
For our finance students at the University of Lagos, this is especially important to keep in mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. Economics isn't always black and white.
Right. Understanding these different viewpoints and how they sort of interact with each other, that's key to getting a full picture of the theory.
It's like having different lenses to look at the same problem.
Yeah, great analogy. And speaking of getting the full picture, wouldn't you say understanding the Keynesian theory is crucial for grasping things like monetary policy?
Absolutely. It's fundamental to understanding how central banks control the money supply and how that impacts interest rates, inflation, even overall economic activity.
So, even though the theory has its critics, it still provides this framework for understanding why people make certain financial choices.
Yes. And how those choices impact the bigger picture, it's really about connecting the dots.
It is. And for anyone who wants to connect even more dots and explore these ideas further, where should they go?
Well, the e-learning tutor YouTube channel is a fantastic resource. They break down all these complex economic concepts in a really accessible way.
Awesome. So definitely check that out if you're hooked on this topic.
It's worth it.
And as you continue exploring, here's something to ponder. This theory was developed decades ago. Does it still hold true in today's digital age?
Ooh, good question.
With cryptocurrencies, online banking, instant payment systems, it's a whole different financial landscape.
Definitely a lot to think about.
Right. Yeah. So keep that in mind as you continue on your finance journey. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.